Here we have Supergirl #1, which came out yesterday, May 14th, 2025. And this is the start of a new ongoing Supergirl series. It is written and drawn by Sophie Campbell. And this is Supergirl on the cover. And it's part of the All In initiative. And it's part of the Summer of Superman thing that they have going on. And I like how they have the little box there. It's sort of reminiscent of the early 90s DC look. So that's pretty cool. And like a lot of the all-in covers, they have a white cover. Now, unfortunately, because of that white cover, you might notice some, it might be hard to see, some little dark smudges there on the cover. They weren't there when I bought the issue. But what happens is, after reading the whole issue, when I was done, I noticed, hey, there's dark smudges on the thing for my fingers. Am I going to have to start reading these with gloves, I was able to kind of smudge it off a little bit, but that's really unfortunate that it really picks up the any dirt or ink. It's like a freshly printed comic. So after getting through the whole issue, especially you have this dark thing there, and the next thing you know, you have black ink on your comic. So that was unfortunate. Now, if you don't want to know what this comic is like, don't watch this video, because I'm probably going to end up going through the whole thing. I always try not to, because this comic just came out. I don't want to really spoil it. But on the other hand, I did want to talk about this comic. Now, here's the thing. The previous Supergirl comic that came out was this one-shot, the Supergirl special. This came out in 2023. And as you can see, there's a very different look for Supergirl lately. Now, I actually thought this new comic was better than this old one-shot, because although this looks really action-packed and cool, in fact, Supergirl kind of looks like Marvel's Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers on the cover. She has sort of that action look, but there she is right there. That's how she normally has been drawn lately. But this comic, this old 2023 issue, was kind of boring. It was basically, even though I like Mariko Tamaki's writing, who wrote this, it was basically like a character study. Like, where does her and Power Girl fit in together, Now, Power Girl's series was recently canceled, and this new Supergirl series replaces it on DC's schedule. And that may be partly because there's going to be a Supergirl movie or TV show or something like that coming out. I don't pay attention to that other media stuff. I'm just interested in the comics. Now, here's an issue of Action Comics that came out about 6 months ago or less. Again, you can see Supergirl on the cover, and there was a backup series, there again dealing with Power Girls in that one too. But they seemed much more like character studies, or like much more interested in her origin and all that stuff. Whereas the cool thing about this is that it seems much more fun, If you're a fan of like Silver Age or Bronze Age Supergirl, you might dig this. The other thing is you don't really have to know anything. Even if you haven't read a Supergirl comic in 50 years, you could probably pick this up and have no problem following what was going on with it. Because, like I said, she's not like how she's been depicted before. Now, in the Power Girl series, when it was taking a sort of different approach to Power Girl's personality, people complained. I enjoyed the series, but a lot of fans were complaining, oh, it's not like Power Girl, blah, blah, blah. Well, here you have a totally different costume. She's wearing, a skirt and stuff instead of the Captain Marvel look. And she seems much younger, than she has been portrayed in these things, where she seems like she's in her early 20s or something. I think she's supposed to be like around that age here, but looks much more girly, and here she is hanging out with Crypto. One of the great things about this comic is there's thought balloons, like back in the old comics, in the early 2000s or so, they kind of got rid of a lot of comics got rid of thought balloons because they were going for a more serious cinematic look. But they were sort of getting rid of one of the advantages of comics, where you can get inside the heads of these characters, whereas you can't really do that in movies unless you have like a narration, which a lot of movies don't like to do. Here's Streaky the cat. Now here's another. I mean, this is a great panel where it's like the Battle City Candor. Streaky the cat. She was like, don't knock it off the table. But that's another like continuity thing because Streaky had been Power Girl had taken Streaky the cat. So why is Streaky now with Supergirl? You can see the fortress kind of looks like the old movie, the movie version of the fortress. So that kind of makes me wonder: is this going to be like how the Supergirl is going to be portrayed in other media? Was this Sophie Campbell's idea to do Supergirl like this, or not? Anyway, she goes into the Battle City Candor, rescues. And by the way, we forgot to mention that she got rid of this villain, like on the first page or second page. So there's a lot going on in here. It's not like the Supergirl special where there's a lot of talking and who am I and character study things. There's a lot of bits in here where she's, actually doing stuff, and the way it's done is very fun, Then again, we get some of her guilt. She doesn't want to become somebody's ward or become somebody's guardian. Here's another cool thing. They have this Welcome to Metropolis 2-pager in here. I hope they do this more often. They really should, where it's an informational page about things that are coming up in the line. So in the Superman line, it's showing here the upcoming comics, the current comics. So this Action comic came out today, or yesterday rather, the Supergirl, and then you have the current issue of Superman, or the new issue that's coming up, and the Superman Unlimited. Then there's this question and answer thing with Sophie Campbell. Now the thing is, in one part in here, she's asked about the costume. Let's see if I can find it real quick. But she indicated that she didn't like the skirt. Oh, yeah. Unpopular Supergirl opinion. I don't like the skirt. Well, why did she give her a skirt when this was her look in the most recent years? So now all of a sudden she has a skirt. But it is very cute, I mean, this is just a great little image there. But this is really nice. I really wish they did more of that. Now, I think they might have been inspired by what X-Men comics are doing lately. Let's see if I can find that real quick. The X-Men comics have their own little X-mentions where they have a question, questioning question of the month. They have the checklist of the upcoming X-Men comics, news about what's coming out in X-Men. And they have that in every issue of the X-Men now. So I wonder if DC was perhaps inspired by that and said, we ought to really do that to promote our stuff, which I think is a good idea. But anyway, so again, lots of thought balloons, which is awesome, I think, And in here, Sophie Campbell had mentioned that she was a fan of the 1972 Supergirl series, which I thought was a good idea. I think going back to something that's simpler for new readers to grab, is a lot better than getting into let's go back into her origin and all this stuff like that. Here we're just explaining who the character is, how she works. She's going back to Midvale, which is where she, originally had was raised. But there's a whole big thing here where there's another Supergirl who shows up with this little bunny, like Happy but it's not Happy. Anyways, there's this other Supergirl, and she's like, you're an imposter, blah blah blah, one of those type Silver Age type deals. But anyway, so even her parents don't recognize her, even though they were the ones who called her over there. And so My name's Linda Danvers. Nice to meet you. She says, so who is this? Who is this other Supergirl? That's taken her place. That's sort of the whole, gist of it. Now, I did read a review in Comic Book Revolution, I think it was. The only review I've read of this comic so far, I read that yesterday, where I was wondering, what other people thought of the issue, or even explain, like, is this her new look? When did this happen? And the person said, this is they liked this sort of setup. It was a positive review, but they said they hoped that this who is the second Supergirl. They hope this doesn't become this big dragged down story arc. They hope it's like it continues next issue and they wrap it up and then move on to some other stuff. And I very much agree with that, because it's one of those things where you don't want to get wrapped up in something where the whole series is based on some duplicate Supergirl, blah, 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 blah. If they can do it as just like, this is a two-parter, part two, solves the question of who this other super, and then you move on to something else in issue number 3. That would be great. Just keep doing that in little short things instead of getting into these big, long story arcs. I think that would be ideal. But anyways, so yeah, it's a good comic. The logo is kind of different. I do prefer the classic logo to this logo. How it's spelled there. It's kind of, it does have more, like I said, a girly type feel to it. And so probably maybe is being aimed at young girls, maybe they would find, young boys might like this, and then young girls might like this more, feminine approach to the character. Although, like I said, she does kind of look young, really young, almost like, she's, 14 or something like that. So it's kind of a question of like, well, how old is she right now? How old is she supposed to be? But I hope this is an ongoing series, so I hope it keeps running. I think it's a good replacement for Power Girl. Like I said, I enjoyed Power Girl as well, but some people didn't. And if they can enjoy this as instead of Power Girl, it'll be interesting to see what fan reaction is to it. Like I said, because of these questions of how she's being portrayed, some fans may react negatively if they're hung up on continuity and stuff. But if they recognize that it's just a way of having a fresh approach to the character as a jumping on point for new readers, then maybe people will not get hung up on the continuity and whatever, and just take it for what it is, a sort of fun, new reader friendly approach to the character. Well, that's it for me. Thumbs up. I enjoyed it. I hadn't even planned to buy it, but I saw this some preview pages. I was like, I'm going to give it a try, because I noticed I liked the idea of Crypto being in it, Streaky being in it, and I liked the thought balloons in it, because those were on some of the early pages. So I was like, okay, those 3 things, I'm going to give this a try. So I enjoyed it. Supergirl #1. Give it a shot. Thanks for watching.